Good morning everyone, it's Sheila and welcome to another episode of PJs and Coffee Time. I kind of like this setting. I did a video with this setting the other day and I just kind of felt like the lighting was perfect and everything was great. So this might become my new background theme for a while anyway. So definitely comment below and tell me how you like it. But so yeah, we're here at another PJs and Coffee Time. If you're unfamiliar with what to do, what these videos are all about, or what you should be doing when you're watching these videos, look in the description area below because it will definitely explain to you how often I do these, which is hopefully every Sunday, and just kind of tell you a little bit of background about why I choose to do these videos and where these videos come from. And as always, I like to share with you all a little tip of mine that helps me throughout my life, and it can range from anywhere from makeup to just personal things in general. So today I want to share with you this little sponge. Now, this is a 99-cent sponge that has been in my life, not this particular sponge, but it's been in my life for, gosh, I don't know, since I was probably, I don't know, as back as I can remember. So I'm gonna say like 5 or 6, I don't know. My mother used to have these back in the day. They were a little bit bigger and they were a pinkish reddish color, like kind of a cross between a pinkish reddish color, and like I said, much bigger. And my mother always kept one in her purse, and she would always kind of like, you know, on those hot sweaty days, I'd see her dab her face with it. And so as I got older, I used to carry one in my purse all the time. Then of course, you know, got into this whole world of YouTube and, you know, saw these fancy things that you're supposed to go and buy to blot your oil, the little blotting cloths and all of these kinds of things. And I thought, I gotta have those things because, you know, they're the latest what's happening. And so I've tried several of those things. Now, first and foremost, I'm not a really oily girl, but you know, in the summertime, sometimes you do want to just kind of dab your makeup a little bit. And what I find for me personally, because I'm not an oily girl, that sometimes my makeup will just kind of just look a little bit blotchy, maybe just from, I have allergies really bad, and so sometimes I'm sneezing. And right now, disclaimer, I am very sick, so if I sound horrible, I do apologize. I probably look horrible today, well, without, you know, so anyway, let's just leave it at that. I probably look pretty rough right now, but I am very sick. I'm fighting a cold, I'm fighting allergies, it's raining outside, so yeah, so I'm a hot mess right now. But I find that, especially during this time, and I think that's why I kind of thought about doing this today on this video, is because I find that I'm blowing my nose or I'm coughing, so I'm constantly touching my face. And even though, I mean, the best makeup in the world sometimes can't stand up against all the touching and the sneezing and the tissues and all that good stuff. So I'll just take this and I'll just kind of do this on my face, and it just kind of makes my makeup look okay, you know what I mean? And this is a 99-cent little sponge thing. I get these, I found these at a beauty store on Walsham, and if you live in my area, I don't even know the name of the beauty supply store, but you know, you can go get weave and stuff like that. But they always have some of the coolest little things for makeup and stuff like that that you would never find, well, I won't say you would never find, but you probably wouldn't find like in your local Walmart or something like that. But anyway, I found these in the black. They're much thinner now, really small, so they fit inside of a makeup pouch really easily. And 99 cents, y'all. My son actually has very oily skin, and when they came out, I used to buy him the pinkish reddish looking color one, and he, I mean, it's not really pink, but he would always say, man, this looks like, you know, a girl. And when I saw these in the black, he actually was away in basic training when I found these in the black, and I sent him a whole slew of them, and he was so excited because they were black, because he does have really oily skin, and he just keeps this in his glove compartment. And sometimes, you know, like if he's like, you know, headed out somewhere to do something for whatever, work related or something like that, he would reach in his glove compartment, pull this out, and like dab his face really quick because he can get really oily. So I don't know, I just thought this was a neat thing to share with you all. And like I said, I got this at a local beauty supply store here. I'm sure you can probably find them. I've not ever seen them at Walmart in the black, but I have seen them at Walmart in like that pinkish color. So anyway, maybe your Walmart will have them in the black, or just go to a local beauty supply store. So anyway, I just wanted to share that tip with you all. And of course, I almost forgot to share my beverage with you all this morning. My goodness, that would not have been good. So I'm actually drinking green tea. This is actually a combination of organic green tea and matcha green tea mixed together. I went to have my locks kind of touched up a little bit last night because I am getting ready to go on a trip, and I have been suffering from this cold, like I said. And so I actually had some organic green tea while I was sitting there getting my hair done, and I had like a little bit left over. And so this morning I decided to just redo it with my my matcha green tea, heated up the tea. Tea is good. Like, you know, I don't know, maybe not a good thing to keep using it, but you know, hey, it works for me. It doesn't go bad, so it tastes great. I've been drinking the heck out of some green tea lately just because I haven't felt good, and I feel like green tea just really makes me feel better. So I haven't had coffee in like a week, I think. Yeah, like a week. So that's why it's in this to-go cup like this, is because I got this cup from my hairstylist. She gets these, she said, at HEB, and I actually want to go and get me some because I love having these. And I've kind of thought, like, sometimes in the mornings it would be so much easier if I had a throwaway cup, you know, and then I don't have to deal with it. But then I end up keeping them because I don't throw them away, because I think I've only used it once. I'm so weird like that. And by the way, what I'm wearing today is kind of a weird thing. I'm not advertising this company. I don't even know anything about this company, but my neighbor, he's always getting like freebies and stuff like that for the company that he works with. And because he knows that I like to lounge around in some really cool things, he gave me this because he was like, I don't know what else to do with it. My wife has tons of them. Would you like one? So I actually do like this. I wear it a lot throughout the house with my sweats, which is kind of like what I have on today. I have on some little leggings. I'm trying to get some stuff done here at the house, and I thought I need to stop and record my video. So yeah, so that's what I'm wearing today. My comfortable clothing is just that, a t-shirt, or it's really not a t-shirt. It's really a nice shirt. It's a, you know, that Business Friday casual look, I guess. But yeah, so anyway, that's what I have on today. I hope you're really comfortable. So let's go ahead and get into this before I start coughing, because I got a feeling that any minute now, y'all, this girl is gonna have a serious coughing spell because it's been happening to me all day. So let's hope I can get through this video. So you can tell by the title of this video that it involves some pretty serious stuff. So I'm gonna take you guys, oh, great. Okay, so I guess it's pretty obvious. I'm in different clothing, look way different than I did earlier this morning, but my girlfriend Terry stopped by just as I was getting started with my video, and she ended up running errands with me today. And it's now actually 15:15 midnight, and I was like, I need to at least try. So I am NyQuil in, so meaning I've just taken some NyQuil. Don't know how long I'm gonna be able to maintain my voice, but I'm gonna try. And yeah, so I actually had to make another run this evening after I got home, and hence why it is so late. And I stopped and picked myself up a green tea in the venti, and I have 3 stevias in here. This is my favorite thing to drink right now while I'm dealing with this cold. So yeah, so I'm gonna sip on this for a few minutes, and I'm going to try to get this video out. So you can tell by the title that this is gonna be a stickler. This is gonna be a doozy. So I guess I'm totally speaking off the top of my head right now. And like I said, I just took a NyQuil, so I hope I can get through this. But basically, I want to start by saying that when the comments were made, he was not aware, my husband at that time was not aware that the comments that he was making was going to lead to any of this. It was a very innocent conversation that went awry. So it's not like he intentionally did anything. It just one of those conversations that went awry. So basically, one of my neighbors, you know, guys doing the guy thing, they were kind of hanging out one day. I want to say they went to the NCO club. I don't really know where they went, but I know they were hanging out doing the guy thing. And men tend to do this, as do women. You know, you get to chatting about your relationships that you have, or, you know, just in general. Like you kind of start chatting about your home life, we'll call it. And they got into the conversation about, you know, how often couples have sex, and, you know, just like, you know, and then it went into, well, you know, how adventurous is your wife, you know, like how, you know, just doing guys things. Now I know when I'm with my girlfriends, we don't maybe talk on the same level, but we do talk about stuff like that. You know, we'll just kind of be like, well, you know, he did it right last night, or whatever. And men do the same thing, just a little bit differently. And so the conversation kind of went like, where it was just like, yeah, my wife, she's very kind of like, she's not very adventurous. She doesn't do this, she doesn't do that. And at the time, well, now my ex-husband, but he made the comment, oh man, I don't have that problem. My wife, we're very, we do this, this, and this, and this. So the conversation kind of went like that. And, nothing was thought of it afterwards. Like it was just like, okay, that was a conversation. And he thought nothing of it. And in fact, when, I don't know if it was the same night or somewhere around that time frame, we had the conversation where he would mention it to me. He was like, yeah, so-and-so, I guess, him and his wife are having some issues in that department. And he's like, did she ever say anything to you? And I was like, no, not really. I mean, like we kind of had like a little bit of conversation. Well, she's just complaining, like some women like to do. Like I said, we all are guilty of these things at some point or another. And I said, but she's never really said anything in specific. And we kind of blew it off. And I was like, well, dang, that's kind of, we just kind of chatted about it and we blew it off and thought nothing of it. Well, probably about, I want to say maybe a month or so after that, one day I was headed out. We lived on the 8th floor, and we lived in a 9-floor condominium, and I think it was 9 floors, but anyway, we lived on the 8th floor. And one day I got into the elevator and I saw him coming, so I held the elevator because we lived on the same floor. So I held the elevator and he came in and we're riding down. I'm going to work and he's going to work. We're riding down and he kind of smiled at me and like, you look nice today. And I was like, oh, thank you. And to me, when someone says that, you don't really think anything negative. You just think, especially when it's a neighbor, it's a friend, like someone you know. So I said thank you and I thought nothing of it. Well, basically, little incidences like that would happen more often. And I kind of, at some point, thought, man, he tells me that a lot. But then again, I was like, well, I guess it's just the moments that you see him or whatever. So I kind of blew it off. So then one day I came home and it was a Monday and I was off from work on Mondays. I came home on a Monday. I'd been out running some errands and I came home on a Monday and he was coming out of his door as I was about to go into my door. And he goes, oh yeah, that's right, you're off on Mondays. And I was like, yeah, I'm off on Mondays. And at this time, during certain days, well, certain Mondays, my son would go to preschool on Mondays, but not every Monday, but this happened to be a Monday that he was at preschool. So, and he goes, where's your son? And I said, oh, he's at preschool. And he goes, oh, okay. And I'll go on in and I think nothing of it. Well, then I hear a knock at the door. So I go to my door and I'm like, I see him again, you're like, oh, no big deal. So I open up the door and I was like, hey, what's up? And he was like, oh, just seeing what you were doing. And I was like, okay, that's kind of weird. But again, I was, like when it's your neighbor and a friend, you don't really go into that thought. Like I didn't think anything. I was still thinking like, I think I probably thought weird, but then I didn't think like weird to be alarmed. I just was like, okay, I don't have time for this. I got things I have to do, only off 2 days a week, And so we stood there talking for a few minutes and he left. And I was like, okay, that was weird, but he's gone. I'm good. Then probably a couple weeks later, I got a call from his wife and she was like, hey, can you do me a favor? She was stuck at work and he needed a ride home and it was a Monday. He needed a ride home. And I said, sure. And, he worked right up the street. She's stuck at work. What are neighbors for? So I go to pick him up and he gets in the car and we're driving to the house. We get out, we're riding up the elevator. And then I was like, all right, I'll see you later. We had small conversation, nothing dramatic, nothing, his door is before my door. And I'm walking onto my door and I realized that he's not going to his door. And I was like, oh my God, really? Are you gonna try to have a conversation? Like, I just drove you home. Like, I don't have anything to say. And so as I was opening up my door, he comes up and he kind of pushes my door open. And I was like, okay. And I was like, what's up? You know, and because again, like I said, I'm not, I apologize. I was hoping I was going to get through this without coughing. And I don't know how well I'm going to do, but anyway. So I was, at this point, starting to get a little bit alarmed, but I was thinking, still trying to think the best, because I'm like, you know, this is my neighbor, he's a friend, you know. And so he pushes the door open, and I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, don't act like you don't know. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, but what are you talking about? And he proceeded to tell me things like, you know, I know you've been looking at me. I know I've been noticing you, and you're so beautiful. And I'm like, okay, this needs to stop, because I don't look at you like that. You're a friend. You're my neighbor. Like, where is this coming from? And, you know, and then he's like, you know, just saying all these things to me. And I'm just like, okay, I've got to get out of this situation. I don't know how, but I need to get out of this situation. So I kind of like, I had a conversation with him, trying to deter the conversation. Like, I was like basically feeding him what he wanted to hear enough to try to get him out of the house. And so I finally did talk to him enough to where he did leave the house. And I locked my door, put my chain on my door, and I was like, okay, I cannot walk out this door again. But of course, this was a Monday that I was going to have to go get my son from preschool. So I was thinking to myself, oh my gracious. So I literally, when it was time to go pick up my son, I literally opened up my door. And what I did was I opened up my door, and I kept the chain on it, but I tried to see if I could see at the angle to where his place was, and I couldn't see well enough. So I had to take the chain off the door so that I could open up the door enough to where I could look around the corner like that. And I thought, okay, it's clear he's not there. So I walked really fast. I had everything I needed. I locked my door. I walked and basically ran to the elevator. The only thing is that the elevators almost faced his door. Like, the elevators were kind of like here. And it was an octagon shape, I guess is what you would call it, because like there was a door over here and their door was right here. So like if I'm standing at the elevator, like their door is like right there. So I was thinking, oh my God, please don't come out that door. Please don't come out the door. And sure enough, as I'm standing there at the elevator, he opens the front door. He opens his door, and I'm like, oh my God. And I try not to look back, but at the same time, I want to look back because I need to know if it's him, what is he doing? And as I look back, he's standing at the front door, and he's kind of like, you know, he's got his shirt off, and he's just like looking like he's like some crazy maniac or something. And he's, you know, positioning his hands in a certain place on his body, and he's just kind of standing there, and I'm like, oh my God. And as I, you know, my heart's beating really fast, the elevator opens up, and I jump on the elevator, and I hit the closed door button really fast. And so I go down, I jump in my car, and I'm thinking, you know, I don't want to have to come back home, because I have, you know, and I thought, well, surely he wouldn't do anything. I'll have my son with me. And so when I got back home, instead of parking in the parking lot area that I normally park in, which you could see the cars from our balconies, I parked on the other side so that you wouldn't be able to look out on the balcony and see my car pull into the parking lot. So that way he wouldn't see me when I came home. So I parked over there, got on the elevator, came up, and what I did was, instead of going out of the elevator and going this way to my apartment, I went the other way to my apartment so that I would have very little like interaction with that side of the building. Because if I came around on the other side, the minute I came around the corner, my door would be there, and I could basically run to my door. So I had my key ready. I literally had picked up my son so that I didn't have to walk with him or anything. I literally had him in my arms, and I like jetted to my door, unlocked my door, went in, locked the door, put the chain on the door, and my phone rang. And it was him. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, what do you want? And, you know, and he's like, he goes, are you home? I was like, yes. And he goes, I knocked on your door a little while ago. You didn't answer. And I said, well, I just got home. And he's like, I didn't see your car pull up. And I said, well, I'm home. And that's all I said. And I said, I need to go because I'm getting ready to feed my son. And I hang up the phone. And at this point, I'm thinking, what am I gonna do? Like, how am I gonna escape this situation? Do I tell somebody? Because, and then it was like, I had this fear that what if this is all in my head? Like it's not, like, not that it's not happening, because I know something's happening, but am I overreacting? Because in my mind, I kept thinking, there's no way my neighbor could be like this. Like, this is just not happening. I have to be somehow over exaggerating this in my head. This cannot be happening. So I convinced myself that, that I was overreacted in my head, that it really wasn't the way I thought it was. I was blowing it all out of proportion. This was not happening. So I basically kind of like, talked myself out of saying anything to anybody, which was the wrong thing, by the way. Anytime someone makes you feel uncomfortable, no matter who it is, you need to say something. But at this point, I just didn't think I could. I really felt like because if I said something and then it really wasn't that way, how that would affect so many people. So I just chose to, keep it to myself. And then probably, I want to say maybe a month went by and things eased up for a little bit. So I kind of felt like, okay, this is, it's not as bad as it was, like nothing's really happening. I'm safe. And just when I felt that way, I came off the elevator one day. I think this was like after work one day. I came off the elevator and I was headed to my apartment, and he came out of his door and very quickly walked up, up to where I was. And he's like, have you been avoiding me? And I said, no. Why would you think I was avoiding you? I just working, taking care of business, whatever. So again, he rushed himself to my door, kind of forced himself in. And this time it got really scary. He pinned me up against the wall. He started saying things to me, that, he's been looking at me. He knows that I want him. And, all these things that he could do to me. And he could please me, make me happy. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, why are you doing this? Like, me and your wife are friends, we're neighbors, we hang out together, we do couple things together. Like, what is wrong with you? And he's like, oh, don't pretend. Like, he's saying all these things, and he literally has me pinned up against the door, and he's, forcing himself to kiss me, and, and I'm like trying to turn away, and I'm just like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? And I'm just like, I'm terrified. I am just so scared. And at that moment, my phone rang, and it startled everybody. Like, it startled me, it startled him. And so I quickly, got away, and I grabbed the phone, and this was a landline. So I grabbed the phone and I'm like, hello. And it happened to be his wife. And she said, is blank over there? And I said, as a matter of fact, he is. And then she was like, she got quiet, and I thought to myself, okay, this is going to cause a problem, because now she's going to want to know why her husband's at my house. And so I said, well, come on over, And so she walked over, and he's standing there in the middle of the floor, like looking very dumbfounded, like literally, like kind of like, what do I say? And she's like, what are you doing here? And he's like, oh, I just came by to see if, and he said my husband's name was home. And she goes, he's not home. And she said, what are you doing here? And he couldn't really come up with a better explanation. So I know at that point, in her mind, she's thinking, so I know, because he couldn't really come up with a good explanation, I know that at that point in her mind, I could see it. I could see it in her brain. Her brain waves are just moving. She's thinking the worst. Like, and now I'm thinking, she's going to think that there's something going on between the two of us, and there isn't. Like, there's, and so I'm trying to think of something, but at the same time, I'm like, I want him to get busted. But at this point, it's like, is anyone going to believe anything that I say? Because of the fact is that I didn't say anything sooner. So she was like, let's go. So they leave and they go home. And I'm kind of like, I'm relieved in a little bit, because I'm thinking, okay, it has to stop now. because she knows she's not going to, I mean, she's going to be watching him. He's going to leave me alone at this point. He's not going to trust, he's not going to be able to, you know, the trust that she won't follow him or whatever. And sure enough, probably within a couple of days, there he goes again. When I would get off work, he would be standing on his balcony to watch my car when it pull up. When I would come out of the elevator, he would be standing in his front door, you know, sometimes with his hands in a certain spot, or like just standing there gloating at me, like staring at me. And I'm just like, oh my God, you know, and I would just, as fast as I could, get to my door. But he never like touched me again, but he would always make it known that he was there. So at this point, I'm like, I've got to say something. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I've got to say something. So the day that I decide I'm going to say something, the wife confronts me and asks me why am I chasing behind her husband. I'm trying to think of the words that she used, but those aren't the exact words she used, but basically that's what she was implying. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. You do know that none of this is me. It has nothing to do with me. I don't want your husband. I wish he wouldn't knock on my door. I wish he wouldn't call my phone. I wish he wouldn't stand on the balcony and watch me when I come home from work. I wish he wouldn't stand in front of his door when I get off the elevator. I don't want any of this. I want him to leave me alone. Now, when I was saying this, it didn't dawn on me that she probably didn't know some of the things that I was saying. She didn't know that they were happening. And so she's like, what are you talking about? At this point now, I'm realizing it. I'm like, gosh, I probably said too much, you know, because, I mean, not that it wasn't true, but it's like at this point, like, I don't want to add fuel to the fire. I just want it gone. I just want it put away. I want it, you know, forgotten. And she then was convinced that there was something going on. And I'm like, oh my God, like, I'm just telling you these things because I want them to stop. Like, there's nothing going on. So they got into a big fight. You know, I guess, you know, she of course asked him about it. He denied it to a certain point, but then he kind of threw me under the bus a little bit as well. He kind of made it sound like that I had been flirting with him. And I was like, there's no way. Like, I would never do that. I'm not even attracted to him physically, mentally, nothing. And at this point, I'm like, I have to say something to my husband. I have to let him know what's going on. But again, I'm like, this is one of those scenarios that when I say something, how is it going to come across? Because I didn't say something sooner. Again, I will say, speak up. Do not wait till later times to try to speak up, because it intensifies the situation. So at this point, I sat my husband down and I'm like, hey, I need to tell you about something that's going on. And I didn't tell you before because I didn't really know how to say it. I wanted to believe that it wasn't true, but now I feel like it's out of hand. I feel like I've lost control of the situation and I can't live like this. So basically I just like poured all that out to him, and then he's sitting there and he's like, what is it? So I tell him about the situation. Now, mind you, again, because I didn't speak up sooner, the guy's wife is already thinking something's crazy. This is really gonna like add fuel to the fire, because little did I know, she'd also mentioned this to him about the affair that we were having. So at this point, he's like, is this the best explanation you can come up with? And I was like, what are you talking about? Of course, he thinks what she said is true. So I'm like, no, this is not true. Like, I'm not pursuing this guy. I don't want this guy. I go, he pinned me against the wall. If the phone would not have rang, he probably would have raped me. That did not go over well at all. It was just like, I don't believe you. You know, I was at that point, I was more afraid to say any more, because I felt like anything that I said was going to come back to haunt me. And because at this point I'm realizing that because I didn't speak up sooner, and because he had staged so many of the situations to where it would look like I was just as involved. And so at this point I'm guilty, even though I'm not guilty. So I very quickly decided I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to remain quiet and just hope that this passes over. And A lot happened. The wife called his supervisor at work, basically accusing us of having an affair. He got called in, and then he's like angry at me because he feels like I've done this to him. And I'm like, dude, I didn't do anything to me. You left your house coming over to my house. You started all this, and now you're gonna have to deal with it. This is you. If you would just leave me alone, we wouldn't have to deal with this at all. But of course, before it was all said and done, he ends up getting, him and his wife get into like some major arguments over it, and she has basically, I guess outed him basically to his supervisor. And so at this point, he looks very guilty to everyone, including the wife. And so they send him to counseling. They talk to him about, being faithful and all this kind of stuff. Like but they're all talking to him like there is a relationship going on. No one is acknowledging the fact that there is no relationship. There is no affair going on. This is a man that has been stalking me to death. And and at some point I remember thinking, because he was getting angry because everything was backfiring on him, this man could possibly hurt me because he's just that messed up in the head. And so then I really started to really get afraid. I got to the point where I was so afraid to leave my house. I started keeping my son at home with me on Mondays. I didn't send him to school ever because I didn't want to have to go out to drop him off or out to pick him up, and I didn't want to be alone. And I almost felt safer because I felt like he would never do anything to hurt my son, because they too had a little boy and he loved his son to death. So I thought, as long as I have him as a security blanket, I'm safe, which did prove to be good because he didn't bother me whenever my son was around. He never did anything, which was awesome. But of course, I'm still dealing with the wife thinking that there's an affair, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to make this right. Like, I don't want her to think that there's something going on, because there isn't anything going on. So basically, what ended up happening is he ends up being told by the military basically that they were not going to renew his enlistment. I don't want to say that he didn't receive like a dishonorable discharge or anything like that, but he was basically told that he needed to give up his career in the military. And so that's basically what he ended up doing. They ended up moving back home to their family. And I never heard or spoke to him since. Now, as far as the relationship between him and her and I, it never was the same again. She, I think, realized at a certain point that I was telling the truth, that there wasn't anything I was doing, because I think she had set back at some point, like she would like follow him, or she somehow or another had access to information that I think made me look very innocent, which was good, because I didn't want her to think that I really was doing something with her husband, that I by some means, was getting what I deserved or any of that kind of stuff. So but of course she and I never could make friendship like we used to have it. As far as my husband, I don't know to this day, to be totally honest with you, I don't know that he ever believed me. I think it just got to a point where, because it just ended, because they were told that they had to leave, he wasn't allowed to renew his enlistment. I think out of sight, out of mind. And so basically what ended up happening is the conversation just stopped. And we didn't talk about it anymore. I'm getting very, very sleepy. I'm telling y'all, NyQuil hits me like a rock. So we basically never talked about it again. And then a few months later, a male person that we had met through that couple we ran into him at the, I don't know, it was at the BX or PX or somewhere, and we all just started talking, and it was kind of like, you know, oh, you should come by and have a drink sometime. So he shows up at the door. Y'all, craziness, craziness, because he's convinced that I was having an affair with the girl's husband, his friend. Now he's got a chance. So the same stuff started. And then it was basically like, well, if you can do him, why can't you do me? And I'm like, I'm not doing anything. Like, at this point, I'm terrified. I'm crying. I'm feeling like, how am I ever going to escape this? How am I ever going to get anybody to believe me that this has nothing to do with me? And luckily enough, I think by me just being very stern and very straightforward, I guess he wasn't, I mean, I think he just was a person wanting in on the action. So he very quickly kind of like stumbled out of the relationship or the situation. He like just disappeared, which was good. But honestly, to this day, I never spoke up. Well, I didn't speak up at the time that it was happening. I do feel like it's always been in the back of his head that somehow or another, all of this was a planned situation, that it wasn't truly that I was being stalked, that I was being, you know, this guy was actually out for me, and that I had nothing to do with it. My throat's really scratchy. I'm getting really tired. So I know I need to end this vlog. So I'm gonna end this vlog by saying I never saw him again. I never spoke to him again. I never saw his wife again. Thankfully enough, nothing ever transpired. I mean, like, he didn't rape me. He never actually you know, did anything physical to me. It was a lot of mental, like, other than pushing me up against the wall and stuff like that. Like, he never like did anything harmful to me. But, you know, like I said, he did get discharged from the military, and so I was relieved when they were no longer there anymore. I was relieved that that other guy like just kind of like left the situation and didn't pursue it. And my ex-husband and I never talked about it. He never acknowledged it. I dealt with that for years in silence, afraid of like repercussions from it still. I always felt like something was gonna happen again. Or I don't know, I just always felt like I had to watch my back. I finally started to relax probably about 3 or 4 years after the fact, but it took me about that long to just be able to be comfortable enough that he wasn't gonna show up around the corner sometimes. Sometimes I wouldn't think. Okay, I just grabbed my cell phone because my camera just died and I really don't feel like taking it off the thing and redoing the battery and all that good stuff. So I'm gonna finish this video because I'm actually pretty much gonna end it, but I'm gonna finish this video on my cell phone. So basically, it took me a few years to get over it, but I finally did get over it. And like I said, I've never spoken to either of them again. My ex-husband and I, which is now my ex-husband, but we really never discussed it. It was never I never was made to feel like I was believed in the situation. It always came across as if I had done something, like I was guilty in that situation in some form. So I am really wanting to speak out to everyone. When something like that happens, speak out right away. Don't let it get to a point where it's looking like you are a guilty party, looking like you have something to do with it. Speak out to anybody that will listen, and don't be afraid of what people are going to say, because the problem is with that is the longer it goes on, the least likely you're going to be believed. And it just makes for a bad situation. So I did wrong by not speaking out about it. And like I said, I can't go back and change that. But if I could convince any of you at this point to do the right thing when something like that happens, the right thing is to tell somebody. You know, we say that to children all the time. We convince children that if someone touches you or do something harmful to you, that you're supposed to speak out. But I think sometimes we as women or men, I mean, I'm not just saying, I'm sorry, I know this is shaking a lot, but we don't speak out when we should. And I definitely should have spoken out when I did. It caused me many years of heartache. And even like I said now, I don't know what he believes and what he doesn't, because it was never discussed to this day. So I'm going to go ahead and end this video. if you've been placed in a situation like that, believe me, like I said, speak out. If you're in a situation like that, speak out now. Do not let it get too far. If you've been in a situation like that and you didn't speak out, or you spoke out and you suffered repercussions behind it, feel free to comment below, share your story. If it's something you want to email me about, feel free to do that as well, because I do know this is a very touchy subject. I have shared it with a very chosen few people in my life, because it is something that I truly have tried to put behind me, and I try not, I mean, it's not something that, it doesn't haunt me anymore. It used to. It doesn't haunt me anymore, but I just finally, you know, like I just got to a point where I just didn't want it, any memory of it, so I just kind of blocked it out. And I just don't talk about it, because I always feel like if I try to talk about it, that other people would not understand, and they would also come up with that same conclusion. And so I just chose, just, you know, I'm not going to be a part of this. I'm not. And so I just kept it to myself. But for some reason, as always, when I do these videos, I always am compelled by something on the inside of me that tells me when it's time to speak up. And so that's why I decided to put this video out there, is just so that if there is someone that's afraid to speak up, it is okay to speak up, and don't wait till it's been a long time, and don't feel like something's your fault when it's not, because, you know, if you're innocent in the situation, then it's not your fault, and you need to understand that. And so I'm going to go ahead and end at this point, because I'm getting really tired, and this medicine is definitely kicking in. But again, I apologize for this whole mess up of a video for today, but I was determined to try to get it finished, and so I finished it. Hooray for me. I'll see you guys in my very next video. Thank you so much for watching.